Good morning, Josh and Mike.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, hey, look at that. It actually works. We can hear each other. We can hear you. You can hear us. Hey, we're so pleased and appreciative that you joined us today. We have some students here in Ag Ed 311 who are learning about youth development and youth programming, and specifically the student organizations of FFA and the application of work-based learning through supervised ag experience. And so they've been struggling or wrestling, noodling with these concepts and doing different assessments and talking to guest speakers. And today they're excited to hear from you as leaders, some maybe your vision or what you think's going on, and to ask you some questions about where things are headed in the future, and maybe just some opinion questions as we get going. I'd like to ask both of you maybe do a little, before we get going, because I know this is the first time we've ever done this. I'm really excited about it. We're two at once. And I think if both of you gave like an opening statement, just some thoughts you had coming in, of things that if you could tell something to a first year or a brand new ag teacher or someone who's getting ready to even do student teaching, that's where these students are. A vast majority of them are in their junior year, so they'll student teach next year. That they need to be kind of focused on and thinking on, what would you tell them? You know, a little short, 2 to 3 minutes, kind of give them a heads up. Mr. Bledsoe, I did pass out the handout that we sent, so they have that copy there. And they had discussed that some in the past, but feel free to reference it. And Mr. Honeycutt, they have had the infographic, and they are intrigued to hear about the SAE renewal effort. So why don't we just have you each give a little short opening? You can. I'm not going to run a stopwatch and call time on you like we do in some of our public speaking contests. But I'll let you give a little opening, and then we'll let the students take the questions where they go, and they'll probably address those questions to both of you, and let you take turns responding as we go through this. We are recording this, and we have put this out as a Google Hangout Live over our Twitter feed, so some people might join us. I don't know. It's kind of early in the morning for most of the nation. And it is fun to see that North Carolina jacket frame there behind you, Mr. Glenn. So that seems very purposely placed. I like that. Very nice. And so, Josh, why don't you go first with your opening for me?
Yeah, well, thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it, an opportunity to be with you all this morning. And good morning. I think if you asked me to share something with beginning teachers as they start out going into the classroom and getting an FFA chapter started, wow, I don't have enough. 2 to 3 minutes is not enough time, but let me give you a couple of thoughts. First of all, I think you are the facilitator and the keeper of the 3-component model of ag education. And above all, make sure that you understand that. And your job is not to do all of it, but to facilitate the implementation of that model in your classroom. And so when I say you don't have to do it all, I think your instruction should flow directly from what you're doing in the local community and what that local community needs. And the really cool thing about ag education right now is that that community now can include the entire world. But I think if you make sure that your instruction is preparing young people for college and careers in the particular area where you are, and that then what you do in terms of SAE is a direct reflection of what you're teaching in that class, and understand that SAE, that as your ag teacher or my ag teacher may have taught or implemented SAE, is not the same today as maybe what it was 10, 15, or 20 years ago. And then make sure that the FFA component that you do in your classroom is a direct reflection of what you're teaching. Was a former high school agriculture teacher myself down in the southeastern part of North Carolina, was an FFA member, state staff in a couple of different positions, and now here. And I can tell you that the FFA in our chapter reflected what each of us, I was in a 3-teacher department, reflected what each of us taught. And so I would make sure that you understand that it is never an expectation of anybody at the state level or national level or anywhere, in my opinion, that you have to do everything. Make sure that the FFA piece comes directly out of what you're teaching. So I didn't have a dairy. I didn't have a dairy whatsoever. I didn't teach dairy. I didn't have food science because I taught horticulture. So don't feel like you have to do it all. And also in regards to that, make sure that you're engaging folks in your school and community that can help you implement that 3-component model of ag education. Make sure you keep those circles balanced, and make sure you understand that you're the keeper of it. If any one part of that's not working right, that's where you can reflect and change what you're doing, because you can keep that balance. And I think if you keep that in mind, understand you're the facilitator of that, understand you don't have to do it all, do what makes sense for your students and your community as a direct output of your instruction, then you're in great shape. The other thing that I would tell you about teaching ag is I'm an agriculture teacher still by choice and not by chance. And I can tell you that it's one of the most rewarding professions. And I shared with young folks at the AFA conference, Agriculture Future of America. We speak in FFA creed terms that we believe in the future of agriculture. You are creating the future of agriculture with your chosen profession. And I'm proud of the fact that you've made that decision. And I can tell you, I know this may sound like I'm wrapping up, Daniel, but I really want to say this at the beginning, that I look forward to working with you to help achieve the mission and vision of ag education and FFA together. It's a great profession. Glad you've chosen it.
Thank you, Josh. Mike, what about you?
Well, it certainly seems like Mr. Bledsoe and I are on point and on message this morning, even though we're a continent away from each other. Of course, we are both North Carolina natives, so that's a lot of North Carolina accents for you this early in the morning up there in Pennsylvania. But I hope you can deal with that. As far as, I'll concentrate right back on what Mr. Bledsoe said, and I think if there was one thing I was going to share with prospective ag teachers, it would be about the three-component model and to take it seriously. When we talk about it in our classes, when we talk about it at national meetings, it becomes this mysterious thing that we talk about, but we really don't delve into. And I'd want to remind you that what that three-component model really is an educational strategy. And the reason we still believe in that educational strategy is because we know it motivates students, it enhances student achievement, it enhances student learning, and it builds strong individuals that go out into the world and do great things. And if we really believe in that three-component model, we have to believe that it's for everyone, not just those who maybe come from a farm that come into our program. It's not just for our top students. It's not just for some of our students. It's for all of our students. And certainly in one area, in classroom laboratory instruction, we have to grade every student. The school requires us to do that. The school requires us to record that and turn that in, and they get feedback on that. There's no acceptance for saying we've got a student that we're not going to grade for one reason or another. And I would say that extends to the other two components as well. We should offer every student the opportunity to go through a program of personal growth and leadership development, and certainly doing that through FFA and membership in FFA and opportunity to be a part of those activities. And then the one that seems to be the most difficult, which is why we've spent so much time on it at the council, is SAE. And that is for every one of our students, not just some of our students, not just our top students, not just those who can apply for award, but all of our students need to have that relevant work-based learning experience, whether it's in a real-world work environment or a simulated work environment. And this is where I'll reference the infographic that some of you have already seen and hopefully looked through, and that is that if you look through the major points that we've put forward in that philosophy and guiding principles, we're trying to adjust SAE to a 21st century environment, and hope that folks understand that we're dealing with those barriers that local ag teachers have had at fully implementing that component. When you're dealing with 150 students in a year, when maybe 98% of your students don't come from a farm, don't come from an ag background, certainly some of the ways, and Mr. Bledsoe said, some of the ways maybe I did it as a teacher in the late 1990s, early 2000s, the way others did it in the 70s or 80s, the way those philosophies may just not work in the classroom and ag programs that we're dealing with in 2015. So we're trying to help people understand how you can engage every student in some sort of meaningful experiential learning in agriculture, connected to an AF&R pathway, connected to a career interest in AF&R, And we believe that that is possible for every student, whether they're in your program 4 years, 6 years, 1 year, whatever the case may be. But I think the big piece there is going back to that three-component model, is to remember that that is for every student. And a lot of times we look at the classroom piece as being the mandatory piece and the other two pieces being optional. If we really want to move and motivate students, we have to believe that educational philosophy is still very sound and relevant for every student that we come in contact with.
Mike, thank you very much. Now, guys, I'm going to push you with a question, and sometimes when I'm listening to you, I wish I could be more thoughtful and think ahead so you could prepare for it, but maybe impromptu and extemporaneous is more effective. So as we're sitting there for both of you, here's your question I want you to answer before I throw it to the students. Thinking about, you are two of our national leaders pushing school-based ag education forward in America. And thinking about how you allocate and use your time on a daily or weekly basis, I'd like for you to articulate one or two of what you see as the most pressing issues facing school-based ag education. And if you want to, of course, we kind of have this setup of being brought up with Josh for FFA and Mike for SAE, but it doesn't have to stay there. If you want to focus on those components, you can, or you can talk big picture. But I really want you thinking in the way that you spend your time and hours on a day-to-day basis as a leader of school-based ag education. What's the most pressing issue, one or two, that you're grappling with on a day-to-day basis?
Mike, I'll let you tackle that council and SAE perspective first, and then I'll chime in. How's that?
Okay, sounds great. If I had to narrow it down to two, the first one that I would say that I spend the most of my time thinking about and think is one of the most pressing is relevance. We struggle to be a relevant program today in several areas. One, within the AF&R space that we serve. I feel like we have to be a program that is focused on career preparation and career learning in the AF&R area. That doesn't mean every one of our students are going to go on to work in ag, but we should be working on and focusing on getting students to explore careers in agriculture, explore those interests, and hopefully we'll get a few of them to move forward and go into that industry. That I think is a big piece as far as us being relevant to the industry we serve. I think sometimes we can be a little bit run away from agriculture a little bit at times. When I talk to local ag teachers, I don't think that happens. Mr. Bledsoe at National FFA, when I listen to them talk, but we talk about that a little bit. That maybe we're for everybody, or we can develop leadership, personal growth, and those things are very important. I mentioned earlier those are very important parts of the component. But all of our students should be getting some sort of exploration of careers in agriculture and be giving thoughtful consideration to a track of career preparation within agriculture or within agricultural education. And since I'm limited to two, I mentioned agricultural education as a profession. Thank you for going into it. That's certainly a pressing issue. We need more people. But the second piece is our connectivity to what's happening in the larger school and career and technical education environment. That's something I spend a lot of my time thinking about. We have not, in many states, dealt well with developing what would be truly defined as programs of study at the local level. We have had difficulty with the industry certification and credentialing requirements, incorporation of STEM and becoming more rigorous in what we deliver. I think that's, as a future ag educator, something I would encourage you to do is pay attention to what's happening in the larger career and technical education environment, not just the bubble of agricultural education, not just what we do in our three components, but look outside and try to get ahead of those trends. We in agricultural education have tended to be reactive to a lot of those movements at times. Even going back to the 1980s and some of the big changes that happened in ag education today, were really reactive to things that had happened earlier in life. So I think about how we need to be more proactive, figure out how we're addressing these issues in the ag education space, to be a leader in career and technical education, and maybe not a discipline that's trying to catch up on some of these issues. And certainly there are some from the last version of Perkins that we have struggled with over the last 7 years. So those would be my two.
Thank you.
So interesting. I guess whatever gets inspected gets respected, right? Y'all heard that before?
No, they haven't, but they need to. Whatever gets inspected is respected.
Yeah. So think about that in terms of what you do. Whatever you inspect gets respected. Did your mom or dad come look at your bedroom to make sure that your bed was made or your room was clean up? I see some smiles even through this old video here, and they come and inspected it, and then you might have had a little respect there for what they were asking for, and got that done. So I think that's when you think about our time allocation, whatever we inspect, whatever we do, whatever we look into, is what we actually respect. And I think that just flips as well. So what we respect, we actually jump into and spend some time on as well. I think from my perspective, there's a couple of ways that I can answer that question. My job is to continue to focus on making business, this nonprofit of FFA run, and to run smoothly and efficiently. In order to do that, you have to do what Mr. Honeycutt talked about, and that is make sure that we're relevant. And he said relevant. I don't know if you can see, but I had this huge grin on my face because when you think about what would make FFA go out of business, and I don't speak of FFA as just a business, okay, but what would make FFA go away would be our lack of relevance in the classroom. Because let's do a little nonprofit management 101, okay? Nonprofits were created, and FFA is a nonprofit, right? See, thank you. I see a head nod. That's right. FFA is a nonprofit, and so nonprofits exist because there's a problem to be solved. That's why nonprofits come around. So they couldn't solve the problem, and they would be the government. So the government couldn't solve it. They couldn't solve the problem, which would be the family. So the family couldn't solve this problem. And then the third institution that we have is the church. So the church couldn't solve the problem. So if family, government, and church can't solve the problem, here comes a nonprofit on the scene, and nonprofits say, okay, well, we'll tackle this problem. And we get funding from various resources to try to tackle the problem. So then my question would be, what is the problem that FFA is trying to solve? I'd be interested in knowing your thoughts on that.
He asked you a question. I'd encourage you to come and see and answer that. The question at hand to respond, and I do like it when the table's returned, is what is the problem that FFA is attempting to solve? Who wants to take a seat and introduce their answer?
Good morning. My name is Matthew Ryder. I'm a junior in AEE. I think the problem, well, one of the problems that FFA is trying to solve is to kind of build better leaders and citizens for the future, better people to lead our society in a positive manner and make things better for everyone.
Cool, thanks.
Is there another submission to the answer to the question?
Hi there. My name is Michael Cahill. I'm a master's student in agriculture and extension education. And I don't have an FFA background, so one of the things that I recognized when I came into this program, I was like, well, what does FFA stand for? And they're like, well, it stands for FFA. And I'm like, that's confusing. Like, it used to stand for Future Farmers of America, so it seems like it's in this transition, it's trying to adapt to new, the new visions for agriculture and in the future, and you're stuck in that the transition period. So
the problem that FFA is trying to solve is
adaptation.
Adaptation, perhaps for them. 25 years in navigating that. So it's not to me. Thanks for Michael. Are there any others that'd like to submit an answer to Mr. Bledsoe? Okay, we're going to take two more, Mason and then Miranda.
Hi, I'm Mason Tate. I'm actually a senior at Penn State. I'll be student teaching in the spring. And I think now more than ever it's to shed some light on the importance of agriculture, and Mr. Honeycutt talked about how 98% of students don't come from farm backgrounds, so to shed some light on the importance of what agriculture serves in our community and our world.
Thank you, Mason.
Cool, thanks.
Hi, my name is Miranda Kane. I saw you, Mr. Bledsoe, just a month ago, so how are you?
Great, thank you are.
Good. I'm a junior in Ag Ed and Ag and Extension Education. I guess the problem or the issue that FFA is trying to overcome would just be motivating youth to not only be better and stronger leaders, but also to engage in agriculture and to make this industry maybe a more sustainable industry that, because it interacts with and it assists with people all around the world. So it's, an important way to engage students and to show them that, what the bigger picture is.
Sure, thanks. As I listen to all those, I want to say I appreciate you all providing those responses to me. Let's go back to 1928 when FFA was formed. I think they asked that same question, why do we even need this? And so when I heard importance of ag and build leaders and citizens and adapt to new agriculture and motivate youth and engage in agriculture, I think if I went back to 1928 and I read some of the works that folks wrote down then, I think that same reason that FFA was started then is the same reason as to why we are here now. And I think when I go back to that relevance piece, when we actually did our strategic plan, here's show and tell. So if you've got that document of your strategic plan, we actually we spent a lot of time asking why does FFA exist, and we went back to that 1928 and we looked at what Walter Newman said. So if you'd like to look at FFA at 25 at some point, it's a book that was written from a very historical standpoint about the beginnings of FFA. I'm going to paraphrase what he said. I won't be able to quote it exactly, but I hope you'll give me a little poetic justice in my paraphrasing of Walter Newman. But he said, at the time, our country boys who were taking agriculture classes don't have the same experiences as the city boys who are in classes in urban areas. And so we need to make sure our boys that are on the farm and in the country can have those same experiences so that their communities can be strong and so that they can be leaders where they are. Now, thank goodness FFA's changed, and so now it's all children, and as we'd say in Sunday school, all children from all walks of life, and regardless of gender, we're serving youth now. But I think in that regard, FFA really hasn't changed the why. We want to prepare young people to be great citizens. We want to grow them as leaders. We want to help them then build communities and ultimately strengthen agriculture, and that's the vision for FFA. So when you ask where I spend a lot of my time today, it's spent on how do we keep FFA relevant, engage people that I work with, and empower the division directors and the team leaders and the education specialists and program managers and program coordinators and all the people that we have here at FFA. How do we create an environment here so that they can create relevant programs and resources for students first and then for teachers so that they can help implement that in the classroom. Again, to facilitate that three-component model. So my time is spent a lot with creating that environment. I think the culture that you create around a business has a lot to do with the productivity and the environment and then the outcome then that comes from that. And our outcome is the most important resource, and that's young people. So I'm speaking from a very high level when it comes to that, but the details of how that happens changes every day. I can tell you that a lot of my time is spent around relationships, whether that's internally here in the building, whether it's teachers or state staff, whether it's an ambassador for the organization. If it's last night at the Marion County Farm Bureau Farmhouse Dinner, it's there making connections with folks so that we can keep ag education and FFA relevant. And our job, I feel like, at the national level, is to leverage partnerships that we have nationally. And when I say nationally, it may even be somewhere at a local community, but we've engaged a person, an individual, a group, an organization, another nonprofit, so that we can leverage this partnership to impact the local level. And I can tell you that if we say it once, we say it multiple times here. We don't exist if the local level is not there, because the heart of the organization is at the local level. And that's what we do, and what we try to do every day is to focus on that. So when you go to that strategic plan, I'll go back, I'll come full circle now. So why does FFA exist? Grow leaders, build communities, and strengthen ag. And that strategic plan has 3 areas around engaging our members. So what do I spend time on? How do we engage our members better? Supporting our advisors. I think FFA's got to be easy. We've had struggles in the past to make certain aspects of FFA easy. We got to make FFA easy for advisors. And then thirdly, how do we tell our story? And if we do those 3 things, and I can talk a little bit more about that later, but as we do those 3 things, we feel like that will really help move the needle on helping us accomplish the vision of growing leaders, building communities, and strengthening ag.
Josh, I'd like to push a little bit just to make sure we have very explicitly clear for the students. I'd like for you to highlight one, because I know that there are many, example of a national relationship that has been leveraged to impact a local chapter. A very specific national that you're really proud of. Like, wow, we were able to talk to this national company, and because of this, blank local chapters can do this.
Oh, absolutely. I can give you lots of them. Let me give you the first one that comes to mind, and that's Zoetis. Are y'all familiar with that company, animal health company? So Zoetis is one of our platinum sponsors, and that means they give FFA more than $1 million annually to help us deliver the mission and achieve the vision. I can tell you that a very small amount of those dollars actually come into this building for national programs. Most of the, I would say probably 98% of the money that Zoetis gives goes directly to local chapters. And so we've developed that national relationship with Zoetis, then where as folks in local communities buy products from the local veterinarian, and that local veterinarian submits that back to Zoetis, and Zoetis then sends the check to that local FFA chapter to help them deliver the mission locally. That's one big example. Let me tell you another one I went on recently, and that's CSX, another one of our platinum sponsors. They provide lots of support in different areas. One is directly for WLC. So when they support WLC, part of that funding then helps us deliver the content. And then you've got young people in chapters who are creating their Living to Serve plans, who then have funds they can apply for grants to implement those Living to Serve plans. And even 2 weekends ago, I was very fortunate to be a part of the Santa train that left Pikeville, Kentucky, and went all the way down to Kingsport, Tennessee, and handed out over 15 tons of gifts to people in Appalachia who were looking for Santa on the back of that train. Now you may say, what in the world does that have to do with ag education and FFA? It has everything to do because of value alignment. And as we look at national partners, we look at how our values align, and when it comes to CSX, it's about serving, and for them it's about how do they move agricultural product from one location to another, and that's more of a, I guess, an ag connection. But there's even more of a value alignment when we look at our values of service to others and in local communities. So when you see that play out on a national level and then impact locally, those are 2 examples, Daniel, that I'll give you. And I could give you more, but I'll stop because I've just doubled what you asked for already.
Hey, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I want to shift back to you. I don't want to take all the time and let you ask the questions that are most pressing in your heart and mind. I know that you've been thinking about it, and we have the rare opportunity to have these 2 esteemed leaders on the call with us. And so I would invite the first, whoever would like to go first, to come to the hot seat, please, and ask questions. If somebody, so that we can maximize our time, to go ahead to our on-deck circle, we can make sure that we are as efficient as possible.
Good morning. Okay, so it's me again, Matthew. All right, I already introduced myself. Cool. So my question is, it's about, you guys are both at the national level, and one of my kind of big concerns is about national curriculum standards and how they're in a lot of general education, like Common Core and stuff. And I don't want to get into like a big thing about like whether it's good or not, but I think both of you have mentioned the importance of individual kind of chapter freedom to help the curriculum match the SAE and FFA portion. What are your kind of opinions and philosophies about using a national ag curriculum, and should there be some sort of freedom to tie that into SAE and FFA? And just what are your thoughts about that? I hope that's clear.
You know, and I'll help a little bit just to remind Josh and Mike that these students have not had any of our methods or curriculum development classes, and so perhaps talking to them about what is the role of the national AFNR standards and alignment, that could probably help because they're probably unfamiliar with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll lead off there, and obviously the council is the one that has developed national content standards for ag, food, and natural resources. Those are based on and aligned to another set of national standards. I talked earlier about the larger CTE community, but the Association of State Directors of Career and Technical Education have a national set of standards for all CTE disciplines called the Common Career Technical Core, AFNR being one of the career clusters within that. And of course we've taken what they've done in their work and developed out performance indicators and sample measurements with the intent to give states and local ag programs a little bit more of an aiming point of how to evaluate, assess, and align learning with that piece, with the Common Career Technical Core, as well as some sets of national academic standards. There's a place for national academic standards, but as someone who believes in community-based planning very strongly, that's what I was trained in. Mr. Bledsoe and I had the same training at the same university, down at North Carolina State University, and we talked a lot about community-based program planning, and Dr. Foster mentioned about the methods course, and we talked a lot about problem-solving instruction 20-plus years ago when I was going through the program. And so I do believe there's a place for national standards to create some alignment around what we're doing nationally within agricultural education, a way that we can assess, and as Mr. Bledsoe said, what gets inspected gets respected. So if we do have some alignment around a national set of standards, we can begin to collect data and inspect and show what we're doing, not only to contribute to the academic standard sets, but the CT standard sets. Our AFNR had standards that we developed, had a lot of business and industry input, so it allows us to provide that assessment back to those partners to show the relevance of our program. But what I would encourage is that every community is different, and every community's needs are different. So Mr. Bledsoe talked about FFA from the perspective of a national organization and the problem that it has to solve. Your ag program, your FFA chapter that you go out to at a local level is going to have its own problems within that community, unique issues that it needs to solve. So I'd say it's a combination. I think, you know, the working from a national set provides us some alignment, but for example, animal science is one of our career pathways, and we have standards around animal science. But are you going to teach swine production, dairy production, beef production, a mixture of all? That, you know, where you're going to concentrate your time within that pathway is going to depend upon what your community needs, what your student needs, you know, what's prevalent in your state, certainly. And what you may do within the animal science pathway from Montana, where I sit today, to central Pennsylvania is probably going to be very different because the needs of those communities are very different. So I would use the national standards as some sort of way to give you an aiming point, to give you alignment. But remember that whatever curriculum you choose to teach, whatever curriculum products and resources you choose to buy and deploy within your ag program, you still need to look at your community, the needs of the community, and make sure that local flavor is there.
Yeah, I don't know that I could add anything to that. Mike, you're spot on. I think you've hit all the salient points. I was just sitting here reflecting on horticulture. You think about some basic concepts that would be in those standards around horticulture, and I could choose that in fruit production or vegetable production or flower production. It just doesn't matter. So spot on, Mr. Honeycutt.
Josh, I'll help a little bit on redirecting that. You spoke about making sure that FFA maintains relevance, and so I think a portion or a nuance of Matt's question is, Can you describe something perhaps that National FFA is doing to help articulate that relevance to the general education settings, whether it's through our standards or not? Like, how do we help talk to those principals, administrators, other academic teachers who are not perhaps from the blue and gold cloth about how FFA is relevant to their goals?
Yeah, so if you think FFA more so than just the National Quality Program Standards, we do lots of things for events to show the how we tie to Common Core, how we tie to quality program standards and content standards. So a lot of most of our resources now, all of our new resources, and we're going back and catching up with our older resources that have been with us for a little while, to make sure that folks see the connection then to the content standards. There's this product that we had developed, and Ag Education developed this under FFA's leadership. Golly, I guess it's been about 15 years ago, called Life Knowledge. And so I bet Dr. Foster is smiling right now because he probably remembers the creation of it. I was a part of it. Many of us were a part of the creation of it. But how many of you have ever heard of Life Knowledge? Okay, one hand. No, two hands, maybe. Okay, no shame.
Well, senior, give me a break here, right?
Well, there's no problem, which is a great segue. Life Knowledge is really created to help bring leadership and personal growth concepts to life in your classroom. And it's created around 16 different precepts. So when you get a chance, check out those precepts. They're right in front of you. So if you're on the delivery of the mission document that I gave you, show and tell again. If you have that document, that second column talks about components of the mission. Those are the 16 precepts that back around 2000 we identified to help define what we mean by premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. So as we develop content, as we develop resources, as we develop conferences and experiences, even at convention, we keep those components of the mission in mind, the precepts of Life Knowledge. The resource that we have on FFA.org for Life Knowledge used to be on a CD-ROM. Now it's for everybody, and you can actually download those lesson plans, and it gives you real-life ways of how to connect leadership and learning into your classroom. So if you go out to the greenhouse and you have to transplant poinsettias or whatever you're doing, what are the leadership concepts I can teach in a class at that time? So there's a resource. And then those resources, you can see how they're tied to 21st century skills and Common Core and the Ag Food Natural Resources standards. We show how those are tied. Now again, we're catching up some of our older stuff, but all of our brand new resources that we're putting online on My Journey, on the teacher side, have all those standards so that administrators, principals, guidance counselors, whomever, can see how what we're doing in FFA is tied to it, even to the point of having the endorsement of the School Principals Association for our national convention. So people see the relevance of what we're doing and how it helps prepare them for success in their school and career. Does that answer that, Daniel?
It does. 256 great lessons that you can find online.
There you
All
go.
right, your turn.
Hello, I'm Garrett Webster. I'm a junior in agricultural science. So my question is to both of you, how can the National FFA help a local chapter with inclusiveness?
Or how can Ag be more inclusive? Yeah.
What was that?
The question is for both FFA or from the council standpoint, how can we make sure that Ag education is more inclusive?
Yeah, I would say it starts at the local level. And when I went to West Columbus High School, we were a 3-teacher department. And I think from the local teacher's perspective, it's creating an environment for your students that reflect what that local community looks like. Now, whatever that may be, your FFA chapter should look just like your school chapter. It should let me get that out. Should look just like your school. You may say, what resources does FFA have to help provide that? I think what we try to do is to create the We Are FFA so that when young people see FFA members on any kind of publication, or when they see FFA members in a video or online, that they can see themselves reflected in what some of those things may be that they can be involved in. And that may be, I'm not really into this agriculture thing right now, but I love to play a clarinet. Okay, cool. You know, we've got this thing called FFA Band, and you can find your talent and put your talents to use in a way. And then, you know what, if we get you in, maybe, just maybe, and I think you got that local ag teacher that's doing a great job, they'll see a lot of great, as Mr. Honeycutt said, career opportunities for themselves. So we're very intentional in how we create our resources and our content so that students can see themselves reflected. What we did locally, I wish I had a magic formula that I could tell you what we did. And it's nothing that I did, okay? But let me tell you what happened at West Columbus. I came in teaching what the guy taught before me was forestry, and I basically killed the forestry program because I wasn't Mr. Waddell. He was the teacher that was there before me. So I know what you're going to face. Well, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so didn't do it that way. That's right. We're going to do this. We're going to do this thing together. And so we created a horticulture program. When we had 12 students in FFA, 12 members in when I got there, in a 3-teacher department. All I did was just expose the students to the opportunities that were out there at the state and national level for FFA. We didn't go to national convention until I had been teaching for 3 years. But we went to the state convention, and we went to state activities, and we had things, most important thing, we did things locally and involved people in that community. And we brought community people in, and we brought all students in, invited students to all kinds of things. And here's the other thing. The students at West Columbus High School saw all 3 of us ag teachers at their events too. And so when you think about inclusion, how do I build that sense of belonging? Because when I was in Delaware, and I was at their state convention 2 years ago, a young man named Malcolm Washington, he introduced himself to me. He didn't know I was on national staff, and I told him I worked for National FFA, and you thought I was a rock star. I mean, it just made me feel so good. You know, I'm just Josh Bledsoe. You know, you go, oh my gosh, you work for National FFA, and I'm like, yeah, it's a cool job, you know. And I said, Malcolm, why are you in FFA? He said, because it's family. It really gives me a place to belong. That's nothing that Josh Bledsoe's done or anything that anybody here at National FFA has done. It's what that local ag teacher's done to build that sense of community and family there at that local level. So I hope you can see reflected in what we produce and what we show in the magazine and anything that we have, that you see agriculture reflected with all people and all walks of life that are involved in it, ultimately to help you at the local level build that sense of community and family.
And I would echo what Mr. Bledsoe said, really from an ag education level. It's inclusiveness happens at the local level, and I've been a part of several different task forces in my career focused on recruiting more African American students into agricultural education, one focused on recruiting more Hispanic students into agricultural education. But what Mr. Bledsoe said is you need to look around at your community, and inclusiveness is broader than just those categories we're familiar with. I mean, obviously there's issues of gender equity, but it's also one of the things that, and I'm going to give a gentleman credit here, a gentleman named Dr. Freddie Scott, who's now retired. He was a professor of agricultural education for many years at the University of Arkansas, and he was a part of one of these task force groups that I got a chance to participate in years ago. And Dr. Scott is an African American. Very few African American teacher educators in agricultural education. As you know, very few African American teachers of agricultural education when you look nationally. So he was a minority within a minority in a lot of cases through most of his career. And it was quite interesting what he said about inclusiveness. Is he said that he didn't believe that it was anyone's intent in their heart to be exclusive. If you talk to any agricultural educator, they'd say, I want my program to reflect my community. I want it. My door is open to all of my students. I don't exclude anyone. But what people saw once they got inside the door is what often became the issue. Now, what he was giving reference to was, you know, if a student is from an urban culture and they walk into your program and all they see are belt buckles and cowboy boots and country music, then how you're not intentionally trying to be exclusive, but how welcome or safe or even connected are they going to feel in that cultural environment? So he encouraged to look around your classroom, look around how you were working with your students to make sure that what you were doing was inclusive of all students. Certainly, in some communities you're going to go to, some of you are going to wind up in a school where maybe agricultural education FFA it's been the thing for the farm kids, and they may not want to see the program opened up broadly to a lot of other people. But as the leader of that program, it's your responsibility to make sure that culture inside your classroom is welcoming and open to all. And I had a very similar experience to Mr. Bledsoe at a local level. I taught in a school that was a rural school in North Carolina, but things are different down there, and so that school is about 40% African American. And so if my program was going to survive, it had to be inclusive of African American student populations as well. And I can't say that it was when I got there, and I don't know that I can say that it was completely where it needed to be when I left. But it really was not about what National FFA offered or what the state FFA offered. It was what we did on a local level, because we had to gain that trust with those students there first before they would take an opportunity on a state or a national activity. And so just from an advice standpoint, some things we did is we really asked the students what they wanted to do, as opposed to incorporating what we wanted to do or what our set of 6 student officers in FFA wanted to do. We really forced them to get out and say, what types of activities would make you want to join FFA, would make you want to be a part of ag education. And so we did some pretty maybe offbeat things. I mean, we did a 3-on-3 basketball tournament as an FFA activity. And FFA members were free, and we charged other people who wanted to be a part of it. The funny thing was the entry fee, I think, for the tournament was $5, and FFA dues were $15. And we had lots of people who paid $15 to become an FFA member that weren't before because they wanted to be in the tournament for free. Anyway, we got them, and we got an opportunity to work with them. We did lunches, which was a big thing in our school. We would do once a month. We would do an FFA lunch, and it was only FFA members that got to leave the cafeteria and come down to our building and eat lunch. For a lot of our students that were in Ag Ed, that was their reason for wanting to be a part of FFA. But getting them involved in the program and getting them tied to the Ag program in some way made them want to continue to take classes. And in some cases, once we gained trust with those students on a local level, they were then willing to try state and national activities after that. So, we start sometimes really grandiose, but what you do at the local level to be inclusive, to create a culture that's welcoming, and to gain the students' trust at a local level is what's going to allow them to take a chance on something beyond that.
I want to follow up with a couple other thoughts there. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And so I can provide all the water in the whole world, but if you don't drink it, it ain't worth a hill of beans. There's just as North Carolina country plain spoken as I can speak this morning. Here's the thing that I'd offer to y'all. I didn't finish my story. When I finished up at West Columbus High School, I was very proud of the fact that our chapter reflected the rural kids, and we were a rural high school, but even the city kids, you know what I mean? There were no cities, but in town limits. But we had town kids and city kids. I had farm kids. I had the chairman of the Board of Education's son in my class, and he was a troublemaker every once in a while. And he was just a boy, you know what I mean? Just a good, solid, mischievous boy. But I had him in class. I had the valedictorian. I had a young man that couldn't read. We had people from all walks of life and all realms of experiences. And it's not me, okay? But it was the environment that we created at that local level. I want you to know that here in Indianapolis, I can't do that. There's nothing that I can do. I don't even claim to be able to do anything to recreate the relationship that each one of you will have with the students in your class. I can't do that. But let me tell you what I will do for you. My commitment to you today, and hear me out, is to create this big, huge buffet. All right? I mean, you can take Golden Corral or Rhines or Hals's or you name the biggest buffet. Isn't that Hoss? Isn't that in Pennsylvania?
Good. I'm proud of you dropping Hosses in there like that. That was
You're
nice.
welcome. That's like throwing the theme, the FFA convention theme, into a sentence 2 weeks after convention is over. So you can have the biggest buffet in the world. Think of it. That's my job. That's our job here. Create this huge buffet. And then each community, as we've already said, is very different. Your job is to go by that buffet and realize your plate is only so big. Now, some of us have a hard time constraining ourselves at a buffet, right? But your plate's only so big. Fill that plate with what your local community needs, what your students need, what your chapter needs. And remember, your gauge of success, whether it's inclusion or anything, is the impact you have on those students in your local community, not the number of state and national plaques that line the walls of your classroom. It's the impact you have on those local students. So don't try to go get everything off the national buffet, because you'll get sick, just like you would at Hoss's or Ryan's or Golden Corral. You'll get sick. Fill your plate with those things that help you deliver the mission and achieve the vision locally.
All right, thank you.
Good hot seat. You were on there for a while there, boss man.
Michael again.
Hey, Michael.
So my question is, we were talking a little bit earlier about some of the issues that we face, not necessarily in the United States only, but as a global population, and what our responsibility is to preparing our students, the youth, to become the future leaders of a globalized world, especially concerning globalized agriculture and food security is my question. So I know that FFA has a few programs that address some of those things, but maybe you could, both of you, could elaborate more on, is that even a focus that you're worried about, or is it, because it's sort of the opposite of focusing on the local level, it's global, so, yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Does FFA offer resources to help young people go into the global workforce? Is that the question? I want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not being very concise, but just helping, how do we help the students become the future leaders of tomorrow, or whatever, when tomorrow's world may look different than it is today with the challenges that we will face concerning population increase. We'll have to double our food production and issues with global climate change.
So let me tackle that from a leadership perspective first, and then Mike, if you want to jump in, I think from a content standpoint, is that cool?
Worked.
Okay, so we pull out the strategic plan for just a minute. I want to reference that just briefly. So this is our strategic plan for 2016 through 2020. And helping folks understand at the top, you'll see the vision is why we do what we do. You've heard me talk about that. Our mission is what we do, is premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. But then we went through a very rigorous time of feedback to get input from our audiences, from our customers, from our students, from past members, from alumni, from teacher educators, state staff, teachers. We sent out on the entire Ag Ed listserv soliciting feedback around what should FFA be focusing on to help move the needle on the vision. And when you look at these three areas, specifically I think with your question, Michael, around engaging our students, we have just started a partnership with Discovery Education, like Discovery Network, that's kind of a big deal. You with me?
Yeah.
So Discovery Education, we're working with them to create a brand new component of our website that will actually dive into, in depth, I say more than 300 careers. AgCareers.com is our strategic partner for career success. So they're going to make sure that we actually know that number of careers in agriculture, because they always give me a hard time when I say more than 300. But just for the sake of the conversation, let's say there's more than 300 careers in ag, all right? They're going to actually outline what those careers are, the education needed, the salaries, everything, and go into great depth so that we can provide a very in-depth experience for students online. So when you think about how we can create or what we can provide for students to help them understand the careers, we hope to launch that. Okay? That's me knocking on wood, my desk. We hope to launch that for teachers in the summer, this coming summer of 2016, so that then they can implement it in their classrooms beginning in the fall of 16. And students will have that ability to explore careers in the ag, food, and natural resources pathway, either from a pathway and cluster area, then in those 8 pathways down to an individual career, or if they're interested in the career, to go up into the particular pathway and see the other options in that particular pathway. So when you think about local, we absolutely are continuing to focus on how that program and chapter can be strong at the local level, but then how can we expose them to the world of careers? That's one way that we're doing that coming up. And if you look at that strategic priority, that's completely around the first and second bullet point under engaging our students, is we want to offer relevant resources where they are and then ensure that they're connecting to the industry of agriculture. I want to go back philosophically quickly here in terms of our mission statement. Probably every one of you can tell us, anybody, what the 3 components of the FFA mission statement are, right? So I'm not going to change it. I'm not offering that we change it. I'm just offering for the moment that we think about it a little bit. Premier leadership plus personal growth equals career success. I'm not saying we change it. Let me make that really clear. I'm not doing that today. I'm just asking us to think about it. To find still leadership in us as students, find still opportunities for them to grow personally. And wouldn't that lead to career success? Isn't that a good recipe, a good formula? And then once I achieve career success, then I'm going to grow in my leadership. And I'm going to grow in my personal growth. And if I continue to do that, I'll continue to grow in my professional career success as well. And so just offer that as a nice way of thinking about that, and how are we creating leadership resources. Go back to, if you go back to that delivery of the mission, and you go back to those precepts that we have around life knowledge, if you go to what we do on our convention workshops, we have one workshop that touches on every one of those precepts. We ensure that that happens. At a local level, the way that you make leadership happen is you make an intentional investment in the students that you serve. They see you as a genuine person. They see you as a leader. And for you to be a leader in that classroom, you have to be green and you have to be growing. So you have to continue to fill your bucket of knowledge from agriculture. You have to continually grow yourself personally. And then you, in turn, pour back into those students those things that you've learned. That's the only way students learn leadership. And then challenge them. Go back and inspect and make them reflect, and then they'll respect the leadership that you provided them. And a lot of times you don't really know it. Y'all know this. If you've been an FFA or if you haven't. Any kind of leadership experience you've had, sometimes you don't know it until a week, 2, maybe a year later. But you had somebody that just exposed you to opportunities. And I would say expose your students to great people, to great experiences, and to great books, because you know that we are the people we are today because of the people we've met, the places we've been, and the books we've read. That's what makes us leaders today. So expose them to great people, expose them to great experiences, and make them read, and make sure that you invest in them intentionally as an individual. That's what grows leadership. My goal is that through my journey and the resources that we provide online, please, 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 if you haven't been to FFA.org and logged in to see all of the resources that we have there for you as a teacher, please do that. I'm going to beg you right here in front of the whole internet. Please go online and check that out. We've got a whole team of former classroom agriculture teachers here at 6060 FFA Drive who intentionally invest in the leadership development resources that we put out for students and teachers, and it's brand new every month. So please check that out. That's how we're trying to help you at the local level and then nationally prepare students for career success ultimately. Long answer, but gosh, lots of things I feel like we're doing. I hope you can see and have a chance to see some of the resources that we have available there for you.
Thank you.
And,
All right.
Addressing from a content standpoint, global competency of our cluster skills within our active natural resources content standard. And what that means, whether it's concentrated in plant science, animal science, biotechnology, being globally confident, globally aware is something that cuts across all pathways. And I spent some time working in the ag industry, and I'll give you an example of how there's a global impact on everyone. And during the time in the industry and working with brain, it was hard for me to understand how what was happening economically in Greece was impacting their grain prices in central Indiana because they weren't economically confident. And I won't go through that chain. I'll leave that to your ag econ professors that you may have to help you understand that if you don't. But every worker, you as a teacher, there's going to be a great impact on your job. So global confidence is going to be very, very important in the future. Dr. Foster there is part of the group that I was in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago. They're working on how to infuse global competence into career and technical education. And as part of that, what I'd encourage you is not just think about the technical content and skills that you're going to teach, but regardless of what you're teaching, try to make sure you incorporate some sort of global aspect to that. It's so easy in agriculture. That will help your students think more broadly beyond what's out there back door, but how these issues or this technical content applies across the world. And from a food security aspect, I think there's a lot of things happening in agricultural education there, a lot of service learning opportunities to help students learn that. But the big thing is we should be producing young people, whether they go to work right away, they go to some sort of post-secondary institution, who understand that there are impacts on their job, on their life, on what they pay at the grocery store every day, or what their mom and dad earns, or what they're going to earn, that go beyond the borders of this country, and can understand that we are in a global economy and that they need to pay attention to that. So my big thing is make sure you bring that into the classroom. Make sure you infuse that into your lessons. As I told somebody about global confidence a couple of weeks ago, what it means to me is, and this is a very old man reference, so I apologize, and I'm not really that old, but in terms of technology and how fast times change, I'm very old in that respect because you'll understand when I say this reference. When it comes to global confidence, what global confidence means to me is that when you pick up the newspaper, you don't skip the world section, right? And a lot of people do that. I remember back at home, we took the newspaper. That's what I'll say in North Carolina, we took the newspaper. And it was very common watching my own family. They would read what was happening locally. They'd read the sports section. They'd read the auto section. But the world section would get thrown away immediately. We want to make sure that we expose people where they care about what's happening outside of their town, outside of their state, and understand how that impacts them, and how they, in turn, have an impact going out. So that global competence piece, I think, for you guys is going to be really, really important, especially important within the career and technical education areas, because it doesn't matter what job you have. There is a global impact on your industry, on your wages, on your opportunity to succeed that's determined beyond the borders of the United States.
And it's so easy now to do that. I mean, look at what we're doing today versus when Mike and I were in the classroom just a few short years ago. You didn't have the technology and the opportunities that you have today. So make it easy and make it fun.
Thank you very much.
One last question.
Sure, no one else wants to go? Since I already got to ask one.
Yeah, we are on the point where I have the last question. And so since Matt is ready, but he's already asked one, does anybody else want to ask a question? Matt, they want you to be the representative.
Oh, right. So my question, or my last question here, I guess, is kind of pertaining to SAE and FFA as they're a part of the overall student grade, like actually being evaluated as part of their ag class curriculum, and they're being graded on it. My question is kind of like, what are your thoughts about that? Like, I understand the importance of it. I think all of us kind of do, but I think trying to sell that to students sometimes can be challenging. It's like, hey, by the way, this is going to be more work in this class than probably most of your other classes. How do you sell that to students? And then also, what are your guys' personal opinions on how much of a grade should be based on FFA and SAE in an agricultural class, like one individual class?
Well, I'll lead off there and go back to, and I'll just tell you what I did as a teacher. One thing that we were not allowed to do when I was teaching in the district that I taught in, we weren't allowed to grade for FFA. We could actually give extra credit for FFA, but we could not have it as a part of the grade. And the reason being is because we didn't have affiliate membership at that time, and unless we were going to pay for every student. In other words, any students on free and reduced lunch, any of those types of things, we would have to pay for it and make it a part of the class to be able to grade. So as long as membership was optional, we couldn't grade, but we could give extra credit. SAE was a different story. That was for every student, and me personally, it was 30% of the grade. So if you chose not to do an SAE, you had a 70 in my class. That's just where you were at. If you made 100 on everything else, you were going to have a 70 in my class if you didn't do SAE. And I had set up benchmarks. We were on a 4x4 block semester system with the 9-week grading period. So I had benchmarks that students had to hit every 9 weeks, and that determined what they achieved in that 30%. That's how I personally did it. Don't know if that's right, wrong, or the best way, but that was my belief. And that was supported by my administration. But I would say, you've seen the infographic. You can see that in that SAE renewal work, we strongly believe that SAE has to be evaluated, has to be a part of the grade. As we've said many times, if it's not inspected, it won't be respected. Students won't do it if it's not part of the grade. So I think that it has to be there. But as far as how do you sell that to students, how do you sell that to others, I look at it as homework. I mean, the math teacher assigns homework and grades it. The English teacher assigns research papers and grades those. I see no reason why what our students are doing outside their class time would not be considered just the same. But you have to be realistic in the expectations. If you're going to grade it and the only way to get an A is to get your American degree or be on the path to get your American degree, that's probably an unrealistic expectation. You have to dial that back to what's reasonable for students to do. And students are very busy today. We talked about inclusiveness earlier. Sometimes our policies at a local level can be what's exclusive. So you got students who are that are playing sports and have other interests. So you just have to be realistic with your expectations for what they're doing as a grade. I'd also invite you to look in that infographic and think about, as ag teachers, how we can create easier pathways for students to get those experiences. Every student doesn't need to work 40 hours a week to get a relevant experience in agriculture. It could be doing a research project that they do in their spare time or study halls during school or over lunch, or in the labs in your classroom after school. They're doing that on the school campus and doing some sort of research project. Doing it that way, making it accessible and easy for every student to participate, and being realistic with your expectations will help you sell that grade function a little bit easier than if your expectation is for every student to apply for a proficiency. So that would be my take on it. And then personally, I believed it was something that if a student didn't do, they shouldn't pass my class. And that usually got people's attention and got them to at least meet those bare minimum expectations that I'd say.
My answer is very similar to Mr. Honeycutt's. I did the exact same thing. Was in a very similar situation where we could not give a grade for FFA because we didn't provide membership for everybody because affiliate wasn't around. I gave the exact same percent. Mike, we must have come from similar stock there, but I gave 30% of the grade for SAE as well. We had record books at the time that we actually kept in class, and so every Friday was record book day, and we would take the first 10 or 15 minutes of class and make sure record books were updated, and then we would make sure that we would grade those, I think twice, been a few years, I think twice, 3 times every 6 weeks. I think that's what I did, but we would actually grade those record books. And what Mike said I think is important is you have to you set that expectation, and then students will, when you first get started, it'll be tough to maintain that expectation. But the expectation you set, they'll meet it, and then they'll understand that that's just part of the class. I shared it with the parents. I think that's important that you make sure the parents understand that the SAE and FFA is a part of the class. It's not extracurricular. It's not co-curricular. It's intracurricular. Make sure your administration knows your expectations of the classroom and that they're bought in, because if mom or dad or parent, guardian, whomever calls, they need to be equipped to say, yep, that's exactly what that ag teacher is supposed to be doing, and that's what I support them doing. So make sure that you make sure the administration knows. You'll have to operate within the local guidelines too as to what % of that grade you can actually count. I'm not here to say what it should be, but I know for me it was 30%.
Looks like Mr. Bledsoe got froze.
Yeah.
Somebody forgot to pay the internet bill at National FFA.
It just shows that they're not wasting resources. You know, they're being frugal. We'll give him a second or two and see if he figures out he's froze and comes back. While he's doing that, and Mike, I apologize ahead of time if he interrupts coming on here. The last thing we're going to do, because I've taken up more of your time than I expected this morning, is y'all shared great philosophically sound things. And I just love having my students have a chance to interact with you. But I also know that I have to keep it very much practical and pragmatic, and what's the next thing? Well, the next thing for most of these students is student teaching, really. And so I guess I ask you, if you were to give one tip to someone. Uh-oh. Hey, Josh, you back?
I'm here. Did I lose you?
Oh, yeah. You were froze there for probably about a minute, two.
Oh, what did I say last?
You solved all the world's problems while you were froze, and we're just missed out on it. I don't know what to do.
Touchdown.
The last thing you were saying, and then I'll go back to how we're going to close up here, was that it's not your place to tell how to grade or how much to grade. Isn't that where we were?
Yeah, you're saying something about you were just about to say you picked the 30%, and you were about, I think.
Yeah, you'll have to. Well, I'll wrap up quickly. You have to choose what that is and live within your local guidelines and what the administration can allow you to do. But the other thing I was saying was I incorporated FFA into my classroom activities, regardless of the class, and I didn't call it FFA. But we taught leadership, and we taught concepts around of the life knowledge, even before life knowledge was created.
Well, anyway, Mike, I think that we lost Josh there.
Yeah, I think he might be gone this time.
So he just got tired of us. I guess they put that thing on a timer, you know, like in the hotels, and that's the end of it. Anyway,
He's back.
He's back. Well, I think the students heard from you loud and proud that you need to work with your local schools, and that we can integrate leadership without having to call it FFA, that we don't need to always drape it in the blue and gold or hide behind acronyms, and we can still accomplish some of our learning outcomes. Okay? Which is awesome. And the way I wanted you to end today, guys, for both of you, is, you know, I was telling Mike how much I appreciate having both of you guys. I can tell that North Carolina State, I don't know who to give credit for down there. Maybe I should give Dr. Moore or Dr. Flowers a call, but you're philosophically sound. I love you sharing that philosophy with our students, and for you being role models to aspire to for them. And so thank you for coming in. But to make it really applied, the last thing I want you to tell them is some of them have, I don't know, I guess it's a year of undergrad left. Some of them have like a month before they're into that student teaching. And like in the here and now, the most immediate recommendation you'd give them, because you went down that path, what's one recommendation you'd give for them to maximize their teacher preparation process or their student teaching? Just one.
Mr. Bledsoe, I'm waiting.
You want me to go first on that?
Yeah.
I hope I don't freeze. One thing for the next year, diversify your diversify your experiences as much as you can. Just soak up as many different things as you can right now, because the more, as I shared earlier, the more books you've read, the more experiences you've had, and the more people you meet will make you a stronger, better leader. So pour into yourself with all grades of experiences right now, so that when you get to the classroom, you can pour that out in your students, into your students.
And I think my one piece of advice would be to persevere. And the reason I say that is because student teaching is not an easy experience. It may come easy to some of you, but it's a challenge, especially when it seems like you're a little bit of a long-term substitute to motivate students, to challenge students. You're going to have some setbacks. You're going to have some lesson plans that fail and don't work. You're going to go into class thinking you've got an hour and a half prepared, and 10 minutes later you've run through your entire lesson plan, and you're sitting there staring at people and hoping your cooperating teacher swoops in to save you. You're going to have a lot of moments like that, but remember that you're novices, you're learning, you're gaining experience. Don't let that discourage you. Too many people that I've known, going back to my friends that I went through AGID with, too many of them let that discouragement during that process weigh too heavily on them and make them think about doing something else, or make them go to grad school and delay getting a job and teaching. Just remember, you're learning. It's going to be tough. There's going to be some failures. And some of you that are still in that room haven't failed it very much in your life. So it'll be a challenge, but persevere through it.
Yeah, I haven't heard too many ag teachers that bat 1,000 as far as going through and knocking out the park for every lesson or every student, especially in student teaching. So those are great suggestions. I also want to publicly thank Josh, you and National FFA. All of these students, you have been a partner in their teacher preparation program, because all of these students got to engage in reviewing those national SAE grants, and that was a great learning opportunity. We appreciate that opportunity. Thank you very much. Several of them had the opportunity to work in the education division at the national convention. They've helped with assistive career development events like parliamentary procedures and others. And these are opportunities that National FFA is engaging as an authentic partner for us in teacher education, and I appreciate that, and I'm pleased that our values align. And Mike, if the council ever needs the voice of a teacher candidate, I know you'll give us a holler, and so we can engage and partner with that. Guys, I took more of your time than I expected, but it was such a well-used of time for us, so thank you for letting us steal that hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes from you. We appreciate you and keep doing great things. Merry Christmas.
Thank y'all. I appreciate what you're doing and proud of this.
Okay, have a good one.
All right, thank you.